In the vast reaches of space, Marcus was known as a mercenary, a protector of those who could afford his services. He had been hired for missions of all kinds, guarding diplomats, rescuing hostages, and even stopping bounty hunters. He had seen it all, or so he thought. That was until he received a mysterious message from an unknown source, a message that would change his life. The message was brief, yet to the point. Protect Princess Leora at all costs. Come to the planet Zelos. Payment guaranteed, no questions. It came from the Queen of Zelos herself, Zilara, a name that carried weight in the galaxy. Her people were powerful, and they valued loyalty above all else. Marcus had heard rumors about the Queen, but he knew better than to get tangled in politics. He simply accepted the job, as he had done so many times before. Arriving at the planet Zelos was nothing like Marcus expected. The planet was vast, with towering cities and lush green landscapes that stretched for miles. Despite its beauty, it was a place that felt both ancient and modern, a mix of old traditions and new technology. As Marcus disembarked from his ship, he was greeted by a group of royal guards who escorted him to the royal palace. The palace was as grand as the planet itself. Gold and silver lined the walls, and the air smelled of exotic flowers. Marcus, however, was not here for the luxury. He was here for one purpose: to protect Princess Leora. When he was led into a grand chamber, he saw her for the first time. Leora stood tall, her posture regal. Yet there was something about her that didn't fit the typical image of a royal. She had a warrior's presence, sharp eyes that seemed to see straight through him, and an air of confidence that commanded respect. Her long, dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her skin was a soft shade of blue like the oceans of distant worlds. Marcus didn't know what he had expected, but it certainly wasn't this. He had imagined a fragile princess, someone who needed protection from the dangers of the world. Instead, he saw someone who was clearly capable of defending herself, someone who carried the weight of the kingdom on her shoulders. She wasn't just a princess, she was a force to be reckoned with. "You're the human," she said, her voice cool and composed. "I have heard of you. You're known for your skills." Marcus nodded. "I do what I must to survive." Leora studied him for a moment, then turned to the side, where a map of the galaxy was displayed on the wall. "I trust you understand the importance of this mission," she said, her tone more serious now. "There are enemies who would do anything to harm my family, and my life is at risk. I need someone who can protect me from them. Can you do that?" Marcus couldn't help but notice the way she held herself. There was no fear in her eyes, no hint of vulnerability. Instead, there was a quiet strength, a determination that seemed to pulse through the air. He could tell this wasn't just a job for her. It was about something much larger. "Of course," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "That's why I'm here." "Good," Leora said, her lips curling into a faint smile. "Then let's not waste time." Over the next few days, Marcus learned more about Princess Leora than he ever expected. He quickly realized that she wasn't like the other royals he had encountered in his career. She wasn't content to stay in her palace, safe from the dangers of the world. Instead, she was always in motion, always working to strengthen her kingdom and protect her people. She trained with her personal guards, studied ancient combat techniques, and even went out into the city to speak with her subjects. Marcus observed her from the sidelines, always within arm's reach, but never interfering. He couldn't deny that he was impressed by her. She wasn't just a leader. She was someone who earned the respect of those around her through her actions, not her title. But it wasn't long before Marcus began to realize that this mission wasn't going to be as simple as he had first thought. Leora was clearly capable, but she was also constantly under threat. He had seen the way her enemies operated, quietly, subtly, waiting for the right moment to strike. Marcus couldn't afford to let his guard down for even a second. One evening, as the sun began to set over the palace, Marcus sat in his quarters, going over the information he had gathered. He was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. "Come in," he said, standing up as the door opened. Leora entered the room, her expression unreadable. She was dressed in the simple armor she wore when she trained, a stark contrast to the royal garments she usually wore. "I need you to come with me," she said. "There's something you need to see." Marcus raised an eyebrow, but followed her without question. She led him through the palace corridors and out into the gardens where the stars above glittered like diamonds. "I've been receiving threats," she said quietly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Some of my own people have betrayed me. They don't want me to rule. They think I'm too young, too inexperienced. They think I'm weak." Marcus glanced at her, his eyes narrowing. "And you believe them?" Leora shook her head. "No, but the danger is real, and I need to know that I have someone who will stand by me when the time comes." She turned to him, her eyes meeting his with an intensity he wasn't prepared for. "Can I count on you, Marcus? Will you protect me no matter what?" For a moment, Marcus said nothing. He had been hired for a job, nothing more. But something about Leora's words, her sincerity, made him pause. He had been in this business long enough to know that loyalties could shift, that alliances could be tested. But looking into her eyes, he couldn't help but feel that this was different. "I'll protect you," Marcus said, his voice steady. "But don't think for a second that I'm here because of some loyalty to your crown. I'm here because you need me." Leora smiled, and for the first time Marcus saw a flicker of warmth in her eyes. Then let's hope that's enough. As they stood in the garden, the weight of what lay ahead began to settle in Marcus's chest. He wasn't just protecting a princess anymore. He was protecting someone who would shape the future of this entire world, and he had no idea just how deep the dangers around her truly ran. As the days passed on the planet Zelos, Marcus began to understand the true meaning of his mission. It wasn't just about protecting Princess Leora from the occasional assassin or rival faction. It was about becoming part of something bigger, something that could change the fate of an entire world. The more time he spent with Leora, the more he realized she was not the fragile royal he had imagined. She was sharp, strong, and determined, with a clear vision for her people. Every day, Marcus watched as Leora led her training sessions with the guards, practicing combat techniques with unmatched precision. She was no stranger to battle, her movements swift and calculated. He had seen soldiers in countless galaxies, but none like Leora. She wasn't just learning how to fight. She was learning how to lead, how to protect her people and her planet. There was a strength in her that Marcus admired, but there was also a vulnerability hidden beneath it. One afternoon, Marcus joined her in the palace courtyard, where she was practicing with a training sword. Her long, dark hair was tied back in a simple braid, and sweat beaded on her forehead as she moved with grace and precision. She didn't notice Marcus at first, so he watched her in silence. The way she focused on every movement, the way her face betrayed no fear or doubt, made him think that perhaps he had underestimated her. She wasn't just a princess, she was a warrior in every sense of the word. "You're good," Marcus said finally, his voice carrying over the quiet air. Leora stopped mid-swing and turned to face him. A faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips, though it was quickly replaced by her usual serious expression. "I have to be," she replied. "I can't afford to be weak, not with the enemies I face." Marcus nodded, watching as she wiped the sweat from her brow. "You're not weak," he said, almost without thinking. "I've seen warriors who aren't half as skilled as you." Leora's gaze softened, and for a brief moment, Marcus saw a hint of something in her eyes. Gratitude, perhaps, or something deeper. But it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by the usual determination. "I don't have a choice," she said quietly. "I am the heir to the throne of Zelos. My people expect me to be strong, to lead them." Marcus remained silent, unsure of how to respond. He had spent most of his life fighting for pay, for survival, but he had never fought for something so personal, so important. He realized that Leora's fight wasn't just about defending her life. It was about the future of her entire world. As the weeks went by, their bond continued to grow. They spent more time together, not just in training but in quiet moments, discussing everything from politics to personal dreams. Marcus had always kept his distance from people, but something about Leora made him feel like he could trust her. It wasn't just her strength that impressed him. It was her sense of responsibility, her care for the people of Zalos, and the way she balanced her fierce determination with a quiet kindness. One evening, after a long day of training and meetings, Marcus and Leora found themselves alone on the balcony of the palace. The stars above twinkled like diamonds, and the night air was cool and refreshing. For a moment, neither of them spoke, content to simply exist in the calm of the moment. "I've never asked you about your past, Marcus," Leora said finally, her voice breaking the silence. "What made you choose this life? The life of a protector, a mercenary?" Marcus turned to look at her, surprised by the question. He had never really thought about it before. "I didn't choose it," he said with a shrug. "It chose me. When you've been through enough battles, enough wars, you either learn to survive, or you don't. Protecting people seemed like the best way to stay alive." Leora studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. "Is that all? Just survival?" Marcus hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I suppose so. I wasn't looking for anything beyond that. But you're different. This isn't just about survival. For you, is it?" Leora shook her head, her eyes distant. "No, it's about more than just survival. It's about what comes after. It's about making sure the people I care about have a future worth fighting for, a future where they don't have to live in fear." Marcus felt a pang of understanding in his chest. Leora wasn't just fighting to protect herself. She was fighting for her people, her home, and her world. It was a fight that went beyond what he had ever known, a fight that required more than just physical strength. It required heart, conviction, and the willingness to sacrifice everything. "You're not like any person I've ever met," Marcus said, his voice softer than he intended. "You're not just a princess or a warrior, you're something else." Leora looked at him, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. "What am I, then?" she asked quietly. Marcus opened his mouth to reply, but the words caught in his throat. He had never been one to express emotions, especially not to someone as important as her. But in that moment, he felt something stir inside him, something that went beyond duty, beyond the mission. It was a connection, a bond that had formed without either of them realizing it. Before he could speak, a guard appeared in the doorway, interrupting the moment. "Princess, the council requests your presence," the guard said, bowing slightly. Leora nodded, a look of determination returning to her face. "Thank you, Marcus," she said, her voice calm and collected once more. "I'll see you later." Marcus watched as she left, her figure disappearing into the shadows of the palace. He stayed on the balcony for a moment longer, his mind racing. He had always kept his emotions in check, but now, with Leora, everything felt different. There was something about her that made him question everything he had believed in, everything he had fought for. But for now, he would continue his duty. He had been hired to protect her, and that's exactly what he would do. No matter what the future held, Marcus knew one thing for certain. His mission on Zalos was far from over, and the bond he shared with Leora was only just beginning to take shape. As the days passed, Marcus's role on Zalos began to evolve in ways he hadn't anticipated. What started as a simple job to protect Princess Leora had grown into something more complex. He had come to care for her, more than he ever expected. He admired her strength, her conviction, and the way she held herself in the face of constant danger. But no matter how close their bond grew, Marcus never forgot that he was here to do a job. He was a mercenary, a protector, nothing more. Or at least, that's what he told himself. Leora, too, seemed to have changed since their first meeting. She had always been driven, determined to protect her people and ensure the future of her kingdom. But now, there was something else in her eyes, something deeper. It was a quiet trust, a kind of unspoken understanding between them. She relied on him, and the feeling, though unexpected, felt both humbling and heavy. He had never been anyone's anchor before, and now he wasn't sure what it meant to be hers. But the most significant change came one evening, when Marcus was summoned to the Queen's private chambers. Silara, the Queen of Zelos, was not someone Marcus had interacted with often. She was a powerful ruler, distant yet commanding, someone who kept her emotions close to her chest. The Queen had been watching Marcus closely since his arrival, and it seemed that she had been waiting for the right moment to reveal something important. As Marcus entered her chambers, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to shift. Silara stood by the large window, gazing out at the sprawling city below. Her regal appearance was flawless as always, her long silver hair cascading down her back like a waterfall. Her sharp, green eyes turned to him as he stepped into the room, and for the first time Marcus noticed the weight in her gaze. "Marcus," Silara began, her voice calm but with an underlying intensity, "I trust you understand the gravity of the situation here on Zelos." "I do," Marcus replied, standing tall. "I've seen enough to know this world is at war in ways I didn't expect." "Good," she said, turning fully to face him. "You are a skilled protector, but you must understand you are not just here to protect my daughter. You are here because I need you to do more." Marcus furrowed his brow, sensing the seriousness in her words. "More? What do you mean?" Silara's expression softened slightly, but there was no mistaking the authority in her voice. "The future of my kingdom depends on alliances, powerful alliances that are not easily forged, and there is no stronger alliance than one formed by marriage." Marcus's stomach twisted. "Marriage?" Silara nodded. "Yes. You see, Marcus, I have watched the bond between you and Leora grow. I have seen how much you have come to care for her." Her words were not accusatory, but there was an underlying understanding that she knew more than he was willing to admit. Marcus felt the weight of her words sink in. He had tried so hard to keep things professional, to maintain a distance. But here was the truth he had been avoiding. He had started to care for Leora in ways he never thought possible. "I don't," Marcus began, but Silara raised a hand to silence him. "I know this is difficult," she said, her voice still calm but with a steel edge. "But the kingdom needs strength, and strength lies in unity. You have already proven your loyalty to Leora. Now you must prove your loyalty to Zelos as a whole." Marcus took a step back, his mind racing. "Are you asking me to marry her?" Silara nodded, her gaze never leaving his. "I am not asking. I am telling you. This is not just about personal feelings. This is about the future of Zelos. I need you to become part of our family, to join forces with us in a way that will solidify the kingdom's future." Marcus's heart pounded in his chest. This was not what he had signed up for. He had come to Zelos as a protector, a hired gun. But now Silara was asking him to do the one thing he had never considered, to marry the woman he had come to care for deeply. "Why me?" Marcus asked, his voice betraying his confusion. "There must be other warriors, other protectors who could—" Silara cut him off. "None who have the same connection to Leora, none who have earned her trust the way you have. You are not just a soldier to her, you are someone she looks to, someone she believes in, and that is why you are the only one who can ensure the future of Zelos." Marcus felt the weight of her words settle on his shoulders like an anchor. He had known that his time here would not be without its challenges, but he had never imagined it would come to this. He wasn't sure he was ready for this kind of responsibility, this kind of commitment. And yet, as he thought about Leora, about her strength, her determination, her unwavering belief in her people, he realized he might not have a choice. "I understand," Marcus said after a long pause. "But I need to speak to Leora. This is her future, too. She deserves to know what you're asking of me." Silara's expression softened slightly, though her eyes remained sharp. "Of course, but remember, Marcus, this is not just a decision for her. This is a decision for the good of all of Zelos." The Queen's words lingered in the air as Marcus left the chamber. He had come to Zelos expecting to protect a princess, but now he was being asked to marry her. He had known that the stakes were high, but he hadn't realized just how high they had truly been. As he walked through the corridors of the palace, his mind raced. Could he do this? Could he marry Leora, not just for her, but for the future of a kingdom he had come to care about? The weight of his decision was heavy, and he knew that no matter what path he chose, his life would never be the same again. When he reached Leora's chambers, he paused for a moment, gathering his thoughts. He had to speak to her. He had to tell her what the Queen had asked of him. But what would she think? Would she see this as a betrayal? Or would she see it as a chance for their worlds to come together in a way that would change everything? With a deep breath, Marcus knocked on the door. "Leora?" he called softly. The door opened, and there she stood, looking every bit the royal warrior she was. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw the look on his face. "Marcus, what is it? What happened?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. He took a step forward, his heart heavy with the weight of the moment. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Marcus stood outside Leora's door, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never imagined his life would take a turn like this. What had started as a simple mission to protect a princess was now a tangled web of emotions, politics, and impossible decisions. The weight of Queen Zalara's words still echoed in his mind. The command was clear: marry Leora, secure the future of Zelos, and ensure peace for the kingdom. But as Marcus stood in the quiet corridor, he couldn't help but feel torn. He wasn't just a protector anymore. He had become someone who was being asked to shape the future of a world he had barely begun to understand. And then there was Leora. The more time he spent with her, the harder it became to separate duty from desire. He took a deep breath, his hand resting on the door, before gently knocking. "Leora?" he called, his voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause before the door opened slowly, and there she stood, her eyes searching his face. Leora's expression softened when she saw the concern in his eyes. "Marcus," she said, her voice calm, but there was an underlying hint of worry. "What's wrong?" Marcus stepped into the room, his gaze meeting hers. The moment he saw her, he was reminded of just how much he had come to care for her. Leora wasn't just the princess of Zelos anymore. She had become someone he admired, someone who had earned his trust. The last thing he wanted to do was hurt her. "I need to tell you something," Marcus began, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of what he had to say. "It's about the Queen. She's given me an order." Leora's brows furrowed, in confusion. "An order? What is it?" Marcus hesitated. It felt strange to say the words out loud, to admit that his future now seemed inextricably linked with Leora's. "The Queen, she wants me to marry you." The words hung in the air between them, and for a long moment Leora didn't speak. Her expression remained unreadable, her eyes fixed on him as if searching for some clue, some understanding of why he was telling her this. "Marry me?" she repeated slowly, her voice soft, almost incredulous. "But why?" Marcus ran a hand through his hair, frustrated at the way his own feelings tangled with his duty. "It's not just about us, Leora. The Queen sees this as the only way to ensure the future of Zelos. It's about securing alliances, about strength, about the kingdom." Leora's gaze softened, and she took a step closer to him. "You're telling me that the Queen wants us to marry for political reasons?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. "She's asking you to be my husband, just to keep the peace?" Marcus nodded, unable to look away from her. "Yes. I never imagined I'd be put in this position, but she insists that this is the only way forward. I'm here to protect you, Leora, and that's all I've ever wanted to do. But now it's more than that. It's about the future of your people." For a moment, Leora stood in silence, processing his words. Marcus watched her closely, trying to read her emotions, but her face remained calm, almost too calm. "I don't know what to say," Leora finally said, her voice quieter now. I never wanted this. I never wanted to be used as a pawn in some political game, but if marrying you will secure peace for my people—" Her voice faltered slightly, and Marcus could see the conflict within her. She wasn't just a princess, but a leader, a protector of her kingdom. She had always been willing to do whatever it took for her people, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness. "Leora, I didn't come here for this," Marcus said, stepping closer to her. "I didn't come here to be forced into a marriage, but now I'm here with you and I can't deny that I care about you. I care about this world, and maybe that's why I'm struggling with this. I've never had to choose between duty and what's in my heart." Leora looked up at him, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of confusion, sadness, and something else, something unspoken. "I never asked for this either, Marcus. I never asked for my future to be decided by others. But if I'm to rule, I have to think about the kingdom. I can't afford to be weak. And if this is what it takes to protect Zelos—" Her voice trailed off and Marcus saw the pain in her eyes. He understood that pain all too well. He had fought for so long without ever truly knowing what he was fighting for. But now, standing here in front of Leora, he realized that there was something more to this mission than just survival. There was a chance to build something meaningful. "I can't do this to you, Leora," Marcus said quietly, his voice filled with emotion. "I can't pretend that this is just about politics. It's about us. It's about what we want. What we deserve. I've seen the way you fight for your people. I've seen your strength. I want to be there for you, but I can't marry you just because the Queen says I have to." Leora stepped closer to him, her expression softening. "Marcus, you don't have to marry me because of the Queen's orders. I don't want that either. But I can't ignore the reality we're facing. If this is what it takes to ensure the future of my people, I will accept it. But I need you to be sure. This is not a decision you can make lightly." Marcus took her hand gently in his, feeling the warmth of her touch. It was the first time he had truly allowed himself to connect with her in this way. "I'm not sure of anything right now, Leora. But I know this. I care about you. I've seen what you're capable of, and I want to be by your side, not because I'm ordered to, but because I believe in what you're fighting for." Leora's eyes softened, and she gave him a small smile. "Then let's take this one step at a time. I don't want you to make this decision out of duty. I want us to decide together what is best for us, for Zelos, and for the future we want to create." For the first time since he arrived on Zelos, Marcus felt a sense of clarity. The path ahead wasn't clear, but standing with Leora, he realized that whatever they chose, they would face it together. The future of the kingdom, their relationship, and everything in between was uncertain, but one thing was for sure. He wasn't going to back down from it. "I'm with you, Leora," Marcus said, his voice firm. "We'll figure this out together." The days following Marcus and Leora's conversation felt heavier than ever. They had agreed to take things slowly, to figure out their future together, but the weight of the kingdom's expectations hung over them like a shadow. Every step they took, every decision they made, seemed to bring them closer to the impossible choice they both faced. Despite their personal struggles, the world around them showed no signs of slowing down. Tensions on Zelos were at a boiling point, and the enemies that lurked in the shadows were growing bolder with each passing day. Marcus had been hired to protect Leora, but now it seemed that the greatest threat they faced wasn't just the enemies from outside. There were traitors within the very walls of the palace. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with brilliant hues of orange and purple, Marcus was summoned to a high council meeting. Leora had been preparing for the meeting all day, her mind focused on the diplomatic challenges she would soon have to face. As Marcus entered her chambers, she was sitting at a large wooden table, papers spread out before her, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Marcus," she greeted him without looking up, her voice carrying the weight of responsibility. "We need to discuss something important." He nodded and moved closer, leaning against the edge of the table. "What's going on?" Leora finally looked up, her eyes tired but determined. "I've received word of a possible uprising. Some of the nobles are starting to rebel against my rule. They don't trust me, don't believe I'm strong enough to lead. They think the kingdom would be better off with someone else on the throne, someone more traditional." Her voice trembled slightly at the word traditional, as though she was fighting against something she couldn't control. Marcus crossed his arms, his mind already calculating the possible threats. "And how serious is this?" "I'm not sure yet," Leora replied. "But I've been hearing rumors. The rebels are planning something big, something that could destabilize everything. And the worst part is, I think some of my own family might be involved." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Betrayal from within was always the most dangerous. "Who?" he asked. Leora hesitated. "My uncle, Cale. He's been quiet for weeks, but now I'm beginning to suspect that he's been working with the opposition." Cale was a powerful figure within the royal family, known for his ambition and his desire for control. If he was truly behind the rebellion, it would tear Zelos apart from the inside out. Marcus could see the weight of her words settle on her shoulders. This was no longer about a distant political game. This was about survival. Her survival, and the survival of everything she had worked so hard to protect. "I'll do everything I can to help you, Leora," Marcus said, his voice steady. "But we need to be careful. If Cale is involved, he won't hesitate to use any advantage he can find." Leora nodded, her expression hardening. "I know. That's why I'm asking for your help. I need you to find out what he's planning, and if he's truly against me, we need to act quickly. The longer we wait, the more power he gains." Marcus stood tall, the protector instinct rising within him once more. He knew the risks, but he also knew that without action, the kingdom, and Leora, would be lost. "I'll get to the bottom of it," he said. "But be careful. If Cale is involved, we can't trust anyone right now, not even the people closest to us." Leora met his gaze, her eyes filled with both gratitude and fear. "I know. That's why I need you. You're the only one I trust fully." The weight of her words echoed in his mind long after he left her chambers. Marcus had always known that the job of protecting her wouldn't be easy, but he had never expected it to become this complex. Now it wasn't just about physical danger. It was about navigating a world filled with lies, manipulation, and deceit. He was about to enter a web of secrets and betrayal, and there was no way to tell who was on his side and who was working against them. The following days were filled with tension. Marcus moved in the shadows, gathering information from his sources within the palace and beyond. He knew that time was running out. Every hour that passed brought them closer to the rebellion's inevitable strike. The longer they waited, the stronger Cale's position would become. It was late one evening when Marcus received the news he had been dreading. A trusted informant had come forward with crucial information. Cale was planning a coup, and he had already begun gathering supporters from the royal guard. The plan was set in motion, and the time for action had arrived. Marcus immediately went to Leora, finding her alone in the royal gardens. The night air was cool, and the stars above shone brightly in the sky. The peaceful setting contrasted sharply with the turmoil that was brewing beneath the surface. "Leora," Marcus called out, his voice low but urgent. She turned to him, her face pale in the moonlight. "Marcus, what is it?" she asked, sensing the tension in his voice. "It's worse than we thought," he said, stepping closer to her. "Kyle's planning a coup. He's already gained support from the royal guard. If we don't act now, he'll strike before we have a chance to stop him." Leora's eyes widened in shock. "So it's true, he's really trying to take over." Marcus nodded grimly. "Yes. And we need to stop him before he gains any more ground. We can't afford to wait any longer." Leora clenched her fists, her face hardening with resolve. "Then we do what we must. I will not let him take my kingdom from me." Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm. "We'll do this together. I won't let you face this alone." For the first time in days, Leora allowed herself a small smile. "Thank you, Marcus. I don't know what I would do without you." Marcus's heart clenched, but he quickly pushed the feeling aside. Now was not the time for emotions. There was a kingdom to save, and nothing, no personal feelings could stand in the way. The next morning, Marcus and Leora gathered their most trusted allies. Together, they formulated a plan to confront Cale and his supporters before they could act. It was a risky move, but it was the only chance they had. Every guard, every soldier would be needed, and even with all their preparations, they knew the odds were against them. Cale's forces were vast, and the loyalty of the Royal Guard was uncertain. As Marcus looked around the room at Leora's allies, he realized just how much was at stake. The rebellion wasn't just a battle for the throne, it was a fight for everything they believed in. If they failed, it wouldn't just be Leora who would fall, it would be the future of Zelos itself. "I'm ready," Marcus said, his voice steady. "Let's finish this." And with that, the fight for Zelos began. The morning sun cast long shadows across the royal palace as Marcus stood at the edge of the palace balcony, looking out over the city. The weight of the decisions ahead pressed heavily on his chest, and for the first time since arriving on Zelos, he felt the true magnitude of what was at stake. It wasn't just about protecting Leora anymore. It was about protecting a kingdom, a future that seemed more fragile with every passing moment. The rebellion was real. Cale's forces were already positioned at key locations within the city, and the royal guards loyal to Leora were fewer than they had hoped. Marcus knew that even with all their preparation, the odds were slim, but they had no choice but to fight. Leora had made it clear, she would not let Kyle take what was hers. She would not give up Zelos without a fight. "Marcus, we need to talk." Leora's voice broke through his thoughts, and he turned to see her standing in the doorway, her expression firm, yet tired. She had been up all night, giving orders to the soldiers and overseeing the final preparations for the coming battle. But now, as she approached him, he saw the vulnerability beneath her determined exterior. "What's on your mind?" Marcus asked, his voice quiet but full of concern. Leora stepped closer to him, her eyes meeting his with a strength that he admired. "We're facing something none of us ever expected. Kyle, he's not just trying to take the throne. He's trying to destroy everything we've built, everything my father worked for. I can't let that happen." Marcus nodded, understanding the depth of her words. "I know, and I won't let it happen either. I won't let it. I've been where you are before, Leora. I've had to fight for something bigger than myself, and I'll fight for you. For Zelos." Leora's gaze softened as she looked up at him. "I don't know if I'm ready for this, Marcus. I've spent my whole life training, learning to be a leader, but this is different. This isn't about politics or strategy. This is about my people, about what kind of future I want for them." Marcus took a step closer, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You don't have to be ready for everything all at once. You just need to be true to who you are. You're already more than ready. I've seen it in you every day. You've got the heart of a leader, Leora." Her eyes softened at his words, and for a moment she seemed to lose herself in them. She had always known that Marcus was her protector, but now, as they stood together, she realized how much more he had become. He wasn't just her guard, he was her equal, her partner in this fight. The bond between them had grown stronger with each challenge they faced, and now she felt it more than ever. But even as the comforting weight of his words settled in, the reality of their situation loomed. Cale's forces were closing in. The rebellion was about to begin, and they had no choice but to face it head-on. "We can't wait any longer," Leora said, her voice resolute. "We need to move fast before Cale gains any more power." Marcus met her gaze, his mind already racing through their plan of action. They had gathered all their loyal forces, and the timing had to be perfect. Any hesitation could lead to disaster. "We go in tonight," he said firmly. "We take the fight to Cale before he can make his move." Leora nodded. "I'm with you, Marcus. Let's finish this." As they left the balcony, the tension in the air seemed to grow with each step they took. The palace was alive with activity as soldiers moved into position, preparing for the confrontation that would decide the future of Zelos. But even in the chaos, Marcus felt the calmness that only Leora's presence seemed to bring. They met with the rest of their allies in the war room, where maps of the palace and the city were spread out on the table. Plans were drawn up, every movement carefully calculated. Marcus's mind raced as he examined the strategy, his focus sharp as he scanned each possible outcome. Leora stood at the head of the table, giving orders with precision, her voice steady as she led her people with strength. It was clear to Marcus that despite her doubts, she had everything it took to lead this kingdom. The rebellion was a test of her leadership, and she would pass it, just as she had passed every test before. "We move in 2 hours," Marcus said, standing beside Leora. "Once we're inside the palace, we'll take Kale's forces head-on. We need to get to the royal chambers before they can seize the throne." Leora gave him a determined nod. "And if Kale is in the throne room? Then we'll face him. Together." Marcus's voice was calm, but there was an intensity in his eyes. He had fought in countless battles, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about survival. It was about protecting everything Leora had fought for, and everything they both had come to care for. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Soldiers were stationed at key points throughout the palace, and the remaining loyal guards were briefed on their roles. Leora moved through the palace with a purpose, her eyes scanning the halls for any sign of the enemy. Her heart beat faster with every passing moment, but she held her head high, determined not to show fear. Marcus stayed close by her side, his presence a constant source of support and strength. They had faced the unknown together before, but this was different. This was their moment to take control of the future, to protect everything they both loved. When the time came, they moved quickly, their forces moving in synchrony as they pushed forward. The palace, once a place of beauty and peace, now felt like a battleground. Every step they took was filled with the weight of their choices, their commitment to the cause. They reached the throne room just as Kale's forces were closing in. Marcus and Leora's eyes met, and without a word, they knew what had to be done. As they burst into the room, weapons drawn, the sound of clashing steel filled the air. Kale stood at the center, his eyes cold and filled with rage. "You think you can stop me?" he spat, drawing his sword. "We're not stopping you, Kale," Leora said, her voice strong and unwavering. "We're taking back what's ours." The battle that followed was fierce, but Marcus and Leora fought with a unity and strength that no one could break. Together they fought for the future of Zelos, for their kingdom, and for each other. When the last of Kale's forces were defeated, and the dust finally settled, Marcus and Leora stood side by side. The kingdom was theirs to rebuild, and they had won the battle. But the true test of their leadership was just beginning. Leora turned to Marcus, her eyes filled with both gratitude and determination. "We did it." Marcus nodded, his heart full. "We did, and we'll continue to do it, together." And in that moment, as they stood in the ruins of the rebellion, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. Together they would lead Zelos into a future of peace, strength, and unity. The hardest battles were behind them, but the journey ahead was one they would walk together, no matter the cost.